Hey guys, Level Cap here, and welcome to Devlog number 43 for C-Beams, a spaceship action RPG that I'm building with my buddy Rich and a small development team. We've been making a ton of progress, and I got so much stuff to show this week, like fully upgraded modular space stations with weapon platforms on them, new bullet balancing physics. We've got damage painting in the game so ships can retain their damage. We have new physicalized asteroids that respond to in-game physics, they break apart, and we even have mineable asteroids with our very first prototype of our mining gameplay functioning in engine. We've also got some awesome combat music by our composer, which you don't want to miss. And also, if you haven't wishlisted C-Beams yet, check the video description for a link to our Steam store page. You'll want to wishlist this game. We will be having a playtest at some point down the road, so make sure you don't miss out on that news. And without further ado, let's get into all the cool stuff that we've been working on for the past 3 weeks. All right, let's begin with part of the project that I have been personally most involved with over the past 3 weeks. That is our modular space stations. The design here is to create space stations that we can kind of put together like Legos to create a variety of designs for the game. I've been modeling and texturing along with a lot of help from Milkman to finalize some of these designs, and I'm happy to say that I think we're pretty much wrapped on phase 1 of our modular station project. This station here would be an example of a small military outpost for the game. In fact, this would be one that you might see in one of the very first tutorial levels. Over the past several weeks, I've added in a little bit of branding to the station, so Belt Tech could be like a mining station, for example. I like the idea of a corporation called Red Giant that could be science and research. So you could take missions from them that might be centered more around exploration and discovery. DSH, aka Deep Space Hauling, would be a corporation that you contract for lots of hauling missions and moving cargo around the verse. And I decided to sort of round off phase 1 at a point where we more or less ran out of space on our texture map to fit any more assets and retain their texture detail. So phase 2 would be incorporating more modular components once we get a better feel for what stations might need to expand even further. I also want to give Panzer V1 a shout out, who's our sound effects designer for the game. He's been working on some ambient sounds for these stations, which you can hear a little preview of right now. Phase 1 Stations has also allowed us to test out our first in-game weapon platforms. Stations can be armed with all kinds of weapons on them, from missiles to railguns to close-range weapons. And this first test allows us to really see what it's like to fight against a stationary platform. How hard do we want to make it, and how to balance it out. So behind the scenes, Rich has been developing a gameplay ability system that lets us add modifiers onto AI weapon profiles. These modifiers can do anything to them, from increasing the damage, the range, the rate of fire, the weapon spread, how good they are at tracking targets, if they're intentionally leading or lagging the target. Basically any variable that we thought would be useful for balancing out how fun it is to fight against a weapon, he has built it out, and now we can assign it to weapon groups on enemy ships and stations. And this lets us really dial in the weapon combat gameplay. We can of course do this for the player ship, and one of the most fun properties I found to play with is just simply the spread on a weapon. It very much dictates the ranged effectiveness of that gun, regardless of the lead time, the damage per shot, or the rate of fire. If it's got high spread, you're just not going to hit anything at range, and it very much creates a natural feeling range gate to any weapon system. We also finally have our very first working iteration of damage painting in the game. This is basically bullet holes for spaceships, but in a system where the bullet holes are instead painted onto an alpha texture map and stored in the game's data. And they will persist on your ship pretty much indefinitely until we tell the game to repair the damage, or you could even save the damage to a save game. And then when you relog on, your ship would still have the same damage from whatever fight it got into. And a big shout out to John Lagostini, who developed a lot of the tech for the system and the 3D brushes that paint it. The next phase will be more particle effects like smoke and sparks that emit from major damage points. Milkman, our modeler, also helped us finalize 2 different railgun turrets in the game. This is our double barrel railgun, and we're still working on getting the single barrel up and running. Now, asteroids have been another major area of focus for the team, and we've kind of had all hands on deck for getting these next systems on board. This here is just a quick little preview at some particle effects that I've been generating for small asteroids around larger asteroids in the game, just to give them a little more presence in the world, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of collision physics at some point soon too. But speaking of collision physics, finally, we are getting our very first interactable asteroids into the game. The idea is to replace more or less all of the main asteroids you see in a level with fully physicalized ones that you can break chunks off of, destroy completely, move out of the way, and just add so much more engagement to the environment. And these are very much work in progress in the early stages. We're going to have lots of particles and dust and other types of small debris coming off of them after a large impact, and also they should be locked to the Z-plane, which they are not right now. There's a bunch of other features and technical stuff we want to add to them, but it is fun being able to show you guys an early preview. And again, our tech artist John Lagostini took point on this project, designing the asteroids and doing custom fractures in Houdini to get them right and get the texture mapping exactly how we want it. Not to mention all of the physics and craziness that went into actually designing destructible asteroids. And not only do we have just general environmental asteroids, but we also have mineable asteroids, which will be very core to our mining gameplay loop. These have come together thanks to the hard work of John Lagostini, Mr. Meteor, and Rich, who have all designed separate components of this system. Let me walk you through some of the basic ideas behind our mining gameplay. In the world, you'll be able to find mineable asteroids either through radar scanning, or you can just see them in the world. They will look different. They'll actually have visible ore veins on the outside containing whatever the most popular ore is that's located inside of the asteroid. You'll switch into mining mode, center the asteroid in your mining reticle, and then begin your mining minigame, which will activate a laser. There'll be a timing minigame heads-up display, which is kind of what you see on the left side there, which is very early preliminary art. It's mostly tech art at this point. You will time what minerals that you want to mine out of the asteroid, and each time you pulse the asteroid, you will mine some of those minerals while also overheating the asteroid until it cracks. After it cracks, there may even be a chance that a core fragment will remain, which you can then scoop up in your cargo bay. There's going to be a lot more nuance to it, but that is the very basics of how it's going to work, and I'm very excited to progress this system further and show you what it's going to look like with all the bells and whistles that we have planned. Now, as I mentioned before, we had multiple people come together to get this system working, and collaborating on complex systems like this can be a bit challenging, but thankfully we have Rich, our tech lead, who has some pretty good ideas about how to do collaboration like this without stepping on each other's toes. And I'm going to let Rich sort of explain some of the basic concepts of this.
Working on a large project with a team while the project's constantly evolving as we work on it requires careful coordination and deliberate architecture decisions in order to keep people from stepping on each other's work. We also want to try developing things in a future-proof way to prevent changes in one feature from breaking another feature. And we also want to keep things testable. We want to try and make sure that testing something doesn't require setting up a bunch of other things that aren't being tested. So all of this is helped by a modular architecture. We break features out into plugins and modules that live on their own. A plugin, for example, can work by itself without the game, and it usually has a demo level along with it to demonstrate the functionality without depending on the rest of the game. So we can have one person working on the movement plugin, another person working on an asteroid that heats up and breaks apart, and another person working on the mining plugin. The mining plugin and the asteroid that breaks apart and the ship, those are all three separate modular pieces that don't depend on each other. So the ship pawn, the mining plugin, the breakable asteroid plugin actually don't know anything about each other. What we do is we set up little adapters and they each work on their own without depending on the other things. Then someone else will build an adapter between these things to connect these things that don't know about each other. If the mining plugin changes, it won't require changes to the ship pawn, just requires changes to this smaller mining adapter. And this is how we deal with a lot of things, like ship movement is its own plugin, and we use an inventory plugin that we got from the marketplace, and the list goes on. Since the inventory plugin is pretty complex and it's a third-party piece of software, we could relatively safely update the inventory plugin and then not have to make any changes on that side. We don't have to customize it. We can ideally make changes in the inventory adapter, but it's the same concept with mining and asteroids and ship movement. Even though they're made in-house, they're still plugins. It really helps to break a big project into smaller and smaller pieces, and we can have individuals working on those small pieces. Much easier for developers to manage small pieces and then connect them together.
So while Rich has been busy orchestrating this complex system, Peter Chambers, our composer, has been busy orchestrating, a virtual orchestra for our combat music system. This is a fully interactive music system that will completely scale based on the amount of action happening on screen. He's designed his concept around a YouTube video by JSX Studios, who basically showed how to create a very interactive music system using meta sounds. And I just want to let Peter show off what he's done.
So, being fairly new to meta sounds, I've discovered Jamie's system, so I'm using that. Some context, I'm doing 4-bar loops and variations of the 4 bars. So meta sounds will randomly pick the variations and then re-trigger them. So in Engine, it's laid out just like Jamie's. We have all the wave players, the mix, and then the important bits over here. So this is individual volume control for every instrument. So they're all connected to the activity level, which I'll play. Peter out.
So as you can see, we've got a lot of cool stuff in the pipeline, and I didn't even show you everything that we've been working on, sort of saving it up till we have a little bit more of some of our concept art and new weapons and other things like that. So I'm really excited to show that to you in the future. I have a feeling we're going to make a lot of progress on mining over the next several weeks. So can't wait to show you how that system evolves, and also hopefully getting some big VFX updates in the near future. If you want to follow C-Beams more closely, check out our Discord in the video description. Once again, I'm going to plug the wish list for the game. If you haven't done that already, make sure you do that. We're getting close to 30,000 wish lists, and it would be really great to be able to announce crossing that milestone to the team. Otherwise, if you want to check out more devlogs, they're right here. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap signing off.